Hello. Howdy. Thank you so much for having me. I thought I would tell today one of my family's favorite stories. I think that every family has a few stories, or maybe a bunch of stories, that they break out every holiday, right? And kind of review. And there's usually one version, someone else's version, someone else's version. There's aspects of the story that no one can ever agree upon. Here's one of mine. I come from a family of buttless men. My father had no butt. His dad didn't either. None of his four brothers had a butt. And I grew up a little bit concerned about it when I was a child, especially because of some of the things that I observed that happened to my dad for his lack of one. Now, in 1980, I was 10 years old, and my father had found a vacation spot that he thought was perfect for our family. His big concern was that there's so many vacation spots that everyone goes to. Wouldn't it be nice to find a little nook somewhere in America that's beautiful and has a lot of local color and flavor, and there's not so many tourists there? And he found one. It's a lot more touristy nowadays, but back in 1980, Edisto Island in South Carolina was a really lovely place to go. But it really did have a lot of that local color. The very first time we were there, we were driving down some the shady lane with the trees, with the moss and all, and we heard some people using some language that my parents had to tell us, we don't say that about other people. So yeah, very salt of the earth characters, very southern, if you get my meaning. And one day when my mom and my dad and myself arrived there at the island, we were so hungry that we said, let's not cook something at our cabin. Let's go to a restaurant down by the beach. So we went to this restaurant, and we immediately found that it was filled to the gills with local people, right? All these Southerners, and here we were walking in as the tourists. Now, my dad is a pretty fat guy, right? He always has been. And he was just wearing that day like a sweatshirt and maybe some jeans. And we kind of realized, the hostess brought us in, and she said, well, there is a table right dead set in the middle of the room. Otherwise, the place is packed. So we were like, all right. We go in there, and we realized that Dad has to really squeeze in because there's this family of a kind of redneck sort of family sitting next to us where the daughter, this 12-year-old girl, is stuck in a wheelchair, and my dad is like squeezing in next to her wheelchair and kind of stuffs himself down into his chair. But as soon as he was settled, he thought, oh, dagnabbit, it's too hot in here. So he starts to squeeze himself back up, and he decides he needs to take off his sweater, right? He starts to take it off, and my mom notices something right away. She notices that he's pulling the undershirt, his T-shirt, up along with the sweatshirt. So she's like, Paul. And he says, oh, Carol, shush up. I just want to get this off. It's so hot in here. So he's struggling and struggling. She's like, Paul. And finally, he gets it up to around here, and he gets a little bit stuck. His arms start to like entangle like a pretzel around each other, and he gets stuck. So his whole big fat belly is sticking out right in the middle of the restaurant, and he's kind of blindfolded now because he's got the sweater up all around his head, and he's kind of thrashing around. So it looks like some sort of bizarre performance art is happening in the middle of the restaurant. Mom's saying, Paul, and he's like, oh, shut up, Carol. And then, because he's doing so much writhing around, and because my father is so in need of more than a belt, right? A buttless man, a belt is not enough. But he was never a suspenders guy. So there he was thrashing around, and before you know it, bam, his pants are down too. So he's wearing nothing except, he's wearing these tighty whities, right? He's wearing these like kind of old, holy Fruit of the Looms that look embarrassing. And meanwhile, he's right in front of this girl in this wheelchair with her very, very stern-looking kind of, like backwoodsman kind of father, who jumps up and he's like, "What the heck is going on here?" And my mom's trying to explain, it's an accident, it's an accident. As soon as my dad realized what was going on, he got that sweater off and brought his pants back up and jumped back down into his chair. And we, the three of us, just started dying. We knew that we had irritated so many people in this place, and that the people sitting right next to us were especially angry. But that made not laughing so much harder. We were just crying throughout lunch at what had just happened. Now, I get to tell that story today in places like this, and, I have a podcast as well. So nowadays, when I come home to the family and there's arguments about what's true, what's not, whose point of view, who was there, I'm like, well, it's already out there to the rest of the world now, guys, because I'm the only one here who has a podcast. Thank you very much.